when people come into our organization and we're hiring, I talk to them, I meet them, and then I have them spend a day in the clinic. I do have them talk with Dr. Boschken, but he'll introduce himself and say, Nicole's actually my boss. We do make decisions kind of hand in hand, but that new team member that's coming in needs to know kind of, okay, who am I going to go to? Am I going to go to Dr. Boschken or am I going to go to Nicole? They need to understand who to go to.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs podcast. Today, coming live from our Riverside studios, is Nicole Pruitt. Welcome, Nicole. And by the way, I'm going to use the new sound effects that come with this, so you won't hear it, but our crowd is going crazy right now.
Woo!
I think our conversation is going to yield some really good information for people out there because nobody knows yet what we're really talking about, though we know what we're talking about. And by the time this posts, there'll probably be a title on it, so people will know what we're talking about. But essentially, Nicole is the director of operations for all things Boschken Orthodontics. So anything that they're doing there, except if it's clinical for the most part, Nicole is doing it. And I know that there's tons of questions and conversations we have about this whole topic because some of the more successful practices out there have somebody by their right hand, so to speak, who helps make it possible. And if you ask Dr. Boschken ever, Dave Boschken, anybody know him? If you ask him, hey, how'd you get to be successful? He always throws Nicole. She's the better half. You got to talk to Nicole. And so let's start with you giving a little bit of background real quick, if you don't mind, about your history, about, you know, I kind of know it a little bit, but where did you sort of form your background and how did you end up with one of the foremost respected orthodontists in the United States?
I love that. Well, so as you know, I actually came from outside of orthodontics. Dr. Boschken will say I didn't know how many teeth were in the mouth prior to starting with him. But truthfully, I started in sales. I worked for a company called ADP. A lot of people have seen them on their paycheck and was trained in sales, went back to Parsippany and spent 2 weeks learning how to sell and then knocked on doors of small businesses and sold them a payroll service. So it was a great experience. We were accountable for our results on a weekly basis and had to stand up and say how much we sold and whether we made our quota. If we did not make our quota for the week, no one would clap for us.
It's for real?
So it was pretty intense.
Yes, if you didn't hit your quota, nobody clapped.
Yes.
Wow, that's hardcore.
That's hardcore, right?
That
Looking
is.
back, I'm like, but it motivated me because I was competitive. I was like, oh, I got to make my number. So if roll call was the next day, what we called it, we would, go to whatever business or call whatever business we needed. So
well, there's motivation and then there's therapy inducing, shame. But yeah, that's, can you imagine if we did that in our offices? Hey, TCs, everybody get up and tell us your numbers. And they clap for the first two and the third one, they just sort of shake their head.
Right. Would not go over well. No. I'm curious to see if there's any offices that do that. I know we talk about numbers, but not the no clapping.
No.
Yeah. So came from that environment and then decided to make a little change. My sister was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and it just made me kind of take a few steps back and say, what is this life about and what's important to me? And in that journey, I interviewed with Align Technology. At the time, it just wasn't a great fit just because of where their expectations were. As you'll all find out, I love Align Technology, but it just at that point was not a good fit for me. And so they introduced me to Dr. Boschken and said, you should go talk to him. I think it would be a really good fit. And at first I thought I was going to be answering phones. That wasn't really my cup of tea. And so I talked to Dr. Boschken. As most of you know, he is very convincing and talked me into the position and haven't looked back. I thought I'd probably be there for 5 years and it's been 12 now. So
right on. And for the sake of closure, Nicole, your sister's okay?
For the sake of closure, yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
I knew that already, folks. I wasn't being insensitive. She told me before, and I know the story. You mentioned your sister and her battle, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knew she's okay.
Right. Thank you.
So it's interesting because we had a director of operations in our practice
Mm-hmm.
for a little while. Wonderful woman, no longer with
Mm-hmm.
us, but wonderful, wonderful woman. If you think about some of the more successful practices out there, and again, I don't mean to embarrass anybody, but I say this only with great respect and love and
Mm-hmm.
admiration. If you think about Ben Fishbein and Amanda Floyd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amanda does a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what you do as well. If you think about in a different kind of a way, you think about Amanda Gallagher and her husband, Ben Wetzel, really, really smart guy. And again, it's nice to have somebody at your side
Mm-hmm.
who help runs it. And in a way, I have that in my partner, Doug Shaw, but he's my partner. He's not managing the business. I mean, he is, but in a different kind of way. So one of the more
Right.
questions we get, because
Mm-hmm.
people most notably see people like Amanda and Ben, by the way, if you're keeping score at home, both of those pairs were Amanda and Ben. I'm just saying,
Yes.
right? It's
I don't
Amanda
know
and
what's
Ben and Amanda and Ben, which is just kind of what are the odds on that? Maybe you need to be named Amanda and Ben to be
right.
successful outside of
Yes.
California. But if you think about Amanda Floyd and Ben Fishbein,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of lecturing that goes on. This Fishbein fundamentals. They've always had their offices open, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody I know is always like, "Yeah, I want to have a practice like Ben Fishbein," and someone like Amanda, right? You hear that all the time, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the road is littered with the relationships that have fallen apart where people tried to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of questions for you because everybody's always very interested. So let's start here.
Yeah.
You don't have a formal business school background, correct?
No. My
Yeah.
background is just sales
Yeah. So
and
an MBA, for those of you,
business degree in sociology, but no business degree. Yep.
well, people often think I need somebody with an MBA, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about Amanda Gallagher and her husband Ben, he's got a law degree, a smart guy, very accomplished. So again, for those of you out there listening, this is another story where there is no MBA here. This is somebody who had some really good sales training. So, do you think, going right into it, do you think your sales training was essential for you to succeed in this position? Do you think you succeeded
Mm-hmm.
because of the sales training, or was that just a secondary part of this? It just sort of came along with it.
Well, I think it definitely helped. I think it gave, I don't know that it would be an automatic, but I would say that the background helped me bounce into that position easily and use my sales skills to be able to be an effective TC. And then I feel like in sales, I learned, and people to know this too, I'm all about the people. I'm all about giving the prospective customer, the new patients walking in, what they're looking for. I'm all about giving them choice, listening to them, and hearing them out, and then providing solutions. So while I don't think it's a necessary, I would say some background, right, in terms
Right.
of whatever that might be, was helpful. It doesn't need to be an MBA, but I do think, and at least in my situation, I think that helped contribute for
Well, you did
sure.
have experience outside of orthodontics in the legitimate. I like to quote that line from Back to School with Rodney
Legitimate.
Dangerfield, the legitimate business community, right? You worked in
Yeah,
real business outside of ortho. Do you think
right.
that was an essential component to your success? Having seen a multi, I mean, I don't know how big ADP is, but I assume it's in the billions at this point in the game,
Hmm.
or was before, some of the online stuff came along.
Yeah.
You worked in a company that had, I assume, thousands and thousands of employees.
Yeah.
Do you think that played a role as well? Because what I'm trying to do here is sort of come down to the commonalities that make it.
Mhm.
I know there's no one-off formula that's going to work,
Right.
but do you think having seen leadership work either functionally or dysfunctionally in some cases played a huge
Hmm.
role in your ability to do a better job where you are now?
So not only did I do sales, but I also worked in management. So I managed a team of salespeople.
Got it.
So that also challenged me to learn how to work with different people. And I think the most challenging part of that for me when I was in sales was that not everyone worked like me. And
Right.
that translates into our community as well. Not everyone works the same way. And so we have to meet people where they're at and bring them up, and encourage them, and not expect everyone to follow our path, but to find their strengths and kind of bring that together. So I think, and even like you mentioned, I was in the payroll industry, which means that I also dealt with HR. And so I learned how HR works, how benefits work, how payroll, all the fundamentals behind that. So I had a little bit of that background coming in as well. So taking over and making decisions about our health benefits, knowing what HR, and Dr. Boschken and I will joke about that too. Like, yeah, so we need the HR manager probably wouldn't approve that comment, just because again, I came from corporate background and things were very different. But all of that knowledge helped me come into our practice or, into Boschken Orthodontics and say, okay, how can I bring this in? And just knowing, hey, I've done it this way before, things can change too. Bringing that outside perspective. So yeah, I believe that everyone's outside experiences all can help contribute to that leadership role. And I think that when doctors are looking for kind of that right hand person, it's not only someone that you gel with, but someone Dr. Boschken's very big picture. He loves, like, he has a vision, he sees it, he's excited. And while I love that passion, I have that passion, but I'm in the details. So how do we make it happen? I'm, around the practice, I'm noticing how moms are interacting with team members, with Dr. Boschken. Are they being greeted appropriately? Like, I'm in the weeds because I want to make sure that, everything that we're doing is going back to our mission statement. So I think it's also about, and I know it kind of veers off a little bit, but I think it's also about finding someone that can help you, what someone else's strengths are, not that we all have weaknesses, but it's balancing that out a little bit. There's just things that is good at, and you've got to keep working on what you're good at and have someone help balance out the other side.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's clear you're a people person, right? To be a good salesperson, you got to be a people person. If you can't be a people
Yeah.
person, you'll never sell. And my guess is that in order to succeed at what you're doing, like everybody else I'm talking about, right? If you think about the ones who didn't go to professional school, no MBA or law degree,
Mm-hmm.
Amanda Floyd's a great example. She's a people person. She understands people.
Mm-hmm.
She can read people. I think that that's pretty essential for the position, right? Like if you're a numbers
Mm-hmm.
cruncher and not a people person, probably much more difficult, right? Because my guess is you deal with a lot more people issues than you do
Mm-hmm.
strategic issues. Or am I wrong?
I think I deal with both, but I am a people person, 100%. That is my strength. That's what I love. Just like you mentioned, and you have to know that kind of intuitive portion of reading people, understanding their body language, all of those kind of things are important as a leader, but also important in the consultation room. The minute
Right.
someone sits back and you say, yeah, you're a great candidate for Invisalign, and mom's sitting back going like this, you're reading that instant, oh,
Right.
she's concerned, she's got, but I would say, yes, being a people person would be 100% essential to the practice, and just being passionate about it.
Are you a systems person as well? I mean, many people, many
People.
people. Um, it doesn't sound right when I say a lot of
When we know.
people, but a lot of folks like you tend to be really engaged with individuals. But
Mhm.
then you say, okay, now here's my policy and system. Go implement this. Oh, the
Mhm.
details get lost. Are you a systems logistics kind of person where you love writing policies and systems, you love implementing policies and systems, you love
Mhm.
checklists, you love developing all of this stuff? Or do you have people in the organization who fill in those gaps for you, where you help implement strategic vision? Dr. Boschken says, I want this. You say,
Mhm.
cool, we'll get this. Hey, Susie, I need a policy and system on X, Y, and Z. Let's sit down and go through it when you have it. Which is more
Yeah.
your style?
I would say that I am a little bit of a control freak. So the part of that is that I want things to be done in my mind right. And so I've had to learn to delegate because I can't do everything. But I do like to make sure that there is a policy in place, that there is a procedure in place. So I will maybe start the process and then hand it off. And I have found we have a couple, great people in our organization that can take that from me, and I trust them with it. It just sometimes is a little hard for me to let that go, and I've got to get better at it, because the only way that I can continue to grow the business and help with that, in the strategy side, is if I let some of those details go. But I do, if I'm being honest, I like a little bit of the strategic, the strategic plus the details of how it's being done, because I want it to be done right. If we were to grow any bigger or continue to grow, I can't do both. So
Right.
if I had to pick one over the other, I'd stick with the people 100%. And that's something, I've had to learn. As I would assume most people, you have one person that can do everything, you just keep handing it to them, and then that person has to say, okay, I can't do it all. Let me focus on what my strengths are, and then help delegate this to other people. So we've gotten a lot better at outsourcing, some of these things, even IT. I mean, I was doing IT in our office, like the emails are going down and I'm helping with that. And it's just like, okay, wait, time out. This isn't an efficient use of my time, so
Right.
making sure that you have that one person, but that you also figure out what makes sense for them, so they don't take on too much.
Behind the scenes, just a little bit for people. People
Yeah.
often ask a question like you did. What are you going to ask? What kind of questions do you have for me? And I always say to people, hey, you're going to talk and I'm going to listen. And the conversation is going to go organically, right? There's some great podcasts out there. Lance Miller had the great Elevate Ortho podcast, and Kyle Fagala and Chris Setta have these great podcasts. And some prepare differently than others. Me, I love taking it in the organic direction. And you just said such great stuff that I want to dive into just a little bit, which is
Okay.
for those out there who are struggling, right? And let's put me into that
Mhm.
category. I'd love to have one person run everything, right? And I want that right hand who, like, I just want to do ortho, come up with great ideas, and have somebody else implement it for me, which is, hey,
Mhm.
everybody out there, warning sign. If that's your vision, you're set up for some real heartbreak if that's what you want to do, because the odds of finding that one individual in my opinion, are very slim. But let's go
Right.
on the contention that you can do it. And I find you, Nicole Pruitt comes into my office. She's been introduced to me by a friend. She's perfect. Everything's great about it. Do I hire her or him as my one right hand for, like, to have and to hold till death do us part? And they're my right hand all the way through, or are they my right hand until we delegate something from them and now I have a right and a left hand? Or
Mm.
does the right hand of the king always stay the right hand of the king, right? And then, the next step is we need somebody who's head of policies and systems. Great. They'll be in charge of making sure the policies and systems are created, implemented, checklists, and all that. Because let's just say that wasn't one of your strengths, but they report to you, or like Fishbein, there's a clinical and an admin, and they're right and
Mhm.
left hands, and they work really, really well together. Um, are you of the ilk that the right hand is the one and only, or that if there were an equal version of you that handled the perceived weaknesses that you couldn't? I don't want to say weakness, but you know what I'm saying, the
Mhm.
non-strengths, that it would be
Right.
great to go hand in hand? Or is it always better to have just one person at the top making the decisions and let
Mm.
everybody else report to them? And I know it sounds silly because you're the one at the top, so the answer might,
Yeah.
but I think I know you well enough already to know that you're going to give me an
Yeah.
honest answer on this one.
No, 100%. So I think that, so two parts is, I do think that there should be a person that your team needs to know who the leader is. They need to know who to go to. And when people come into our organization and we're hiring, I talk to them, I meet them, and then I have them spend a day in the clinic. I do have them talk with Dr. Boschken, but he'll introduce himself and say, Nicole's actually my boss. And we want to set, not that I'm his boss, but we do make decisions, kind of hand in hand. But that new team member that's coming in needs to know, kind of, okay, who am I going to go to? Am I going to go to Dr. Boschken, or am I going to go to Nicole? Like, they need to understand who to go to. So that's where I think it is important to have that one point. And
Okay.
then I could see having a clinical and a personnel, or a clinical and an admin as well. But as we're growing, what I've done is I've brought people that are then underneath me that I can delegate to.
Okay.
What I don't want to happen, and we've struggled a little bit back and forth, is like Dr. Boschken will be like, "You do everything," and then sometimes he'll take something on, and I'm like, "Wait, hold on, the team's confused." It's like the kids at home are confused.
Right.
Mom or dad don't have like the same parenting style or something. It's like you have to stay consistent there. That's so coming from me. I would say it would be good to have like you had mentioned, it could be like that. But with my style, I would assume I would like someone, and how I've done it is right underneath me. So then I can then delegate, and then people can go up to that person as well. But they kind of need, I don't want to say chain of command, but they need like an org chart in terms of where they go to.
Do you feel it's a little bit like, mom and dad in the practice where, Dr. Boschken and myself aren't that far apart in age. I think we have kids, within 5, 7 years of each other. And I feel like
Okay.
my role, I've been practicing in dentistry 31 years at this point. And I feel like my role has almost been kind of like come in, uh, help run culture, right? Help be good to everybody. Help make sure that the big, 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 broad, huge fires that, can't be handled by anybody else, or the conversations that have to be had by me are had by me. But for the most part,
Mm.
I'm there to not get in the way of the people I hired, to shake hands, kiss babies, hug moms, do
Mm-hmm.
good ortho, and offer vision, right? Offer my
Mm-hmm.
founder's vision to my team and stay out of the way otherwise. Would you say that that's kind of like how your office runs, that his job is just to show up and do the kind of things I just talked about, or is it very different?
Absolutely. No, that's it. I was going to say Disneyland, Dad, but but there is a
Disneyland. Well,
little bit more.
here in Texas, there is no Disneyland, Dad.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, you're in Northern
that's a
California.
California or
But
Florida
but again,
thing.
I wish that's a
But
lesson
yeah,
that I wish
yeah.
I'd learned earlier in my career. I wish I'd learned in my 30s and 40s that I don't matter. Like I say this all the time, and people take it the wrong way. But
Hmm.
orthodontists in general take themselves and the presence of them way too seriously. Like if you've done a good job of developing your culture, if you've put the right people in
Hmm.
the right seats, if you have systems and policies that are running effectively, you are, as the doctor, as the founder, you are the cherry on top. You are not the ice cream.
Hmm.
It should be plug and play. And I would be willing to wager, God forbid, aliens abduct Dr. Boschkin tomorrow. And on
Hmm.
Thursday morning or whenever it is, there's no Dr. Boschkin to come to the office, but there's another doctor who's good and nice and kind. It could be plug and
Hmm.
play in most areas. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
folks, we're talking about a practice that's 97% share of chair aligner. This is a niche
Yeah.
practice. Okay. So don't give me any of that, as the old men would say, the gobbledygook. Don't give me any gobbledygook that your practice is different. Okay. Dave Boschkin is one hell of a human being and a great clinician and a great visionary. And if he's dispensable in his practice, so are you. And so I think it was a lesson I wish I'd learned earlier in my career that you just sort of reaffirmed, which is find the right people, surround yourself with them, and
Mm-hmm.
help them in their infancy as they grow, but then let them take over and do their jobs. And again, I suspect that he doesn't come up to you on a daily basis or even a weekly basis and go, "How are we doing with that system and policy?" Or, "What's happening with that checklist you were creating?" How often does he come up to you and say to you, and I don't know the answer, so I could be way off, but how often does he come up to
Yeah.
you and go, "Hey, how's that checklist going?"
It depends. So this has also evolved over time. So when
Right.
we first started working together, he would text me whenever he thought of something. Didn't matter if it was 3 p.m. or 8 p.m. Like, hey, we got to do this. What's going on with this contest? And after a while, I was like, okay, Dr. Boschkin, I know you're passionate about this, but when I'm at home at 8 o'clock at night with my kids, I got to turn work off. And he's like, well, I'm just kind of getting it off my chest so that I can move on. And I'm like, right, but you're moving on, and now it's on me. So now he makes a list, on his phone. And usually in the morning, as I come in, we'll do a quick touch base when I walk in. Hey, do you have anything for me? that kind of thing. So we've kind of learned our way on how to figure that out.
Right.
So he's
And by the
much
way,
more hands off.
there is an app where he can schedule a text, if you didn't know. There was an app I once had that
He
you can,
needs that.
because he's like me. His brain is firing all the time. He's always coming up with ideas that other people have to implement because he's not going to
Yes.
implement it. And,
Right.
and I found this app, it was years ago, and I could enter things in a text and it would appear at 7 a.m. the next day or 6 a.m. the next morning. I don't remember what it was. It was a number of
Oh
years ago.
gosh, you got to
But
come up with that.
well, it exists. I just don't know the name of it. You
Yeah.
have to go look it up. But it's nice
Okay.
because some people like myself, I tell everybody, text me any hour, day or night, because my phone, when I'm with my family, my phone's not with me. My phone is tucked away because when I'm with family and like really with family, my phone is nowhere near me because I don't want it. And so you can text me at 2 a.m. You can text me at 7 p.m. It doesn't matter if I'm doing something else, I'm not going to see it. But then there are other people who do have their phone on them, and it's going to ring and you're going to see it and it's going to be on your mind, and that's where scheduling it for later could be a really good idea for you.
Yeah, that's great. I
Yeah,
love
but
that.
it does sound to me like he just sort of like let you do your thing and work from there. And I think it's important. But my question for you is, now that you're successfully ingrained in it for over a decade, 12 years, I'm looking to hire somebody. What are some of the bigger mistakes that you think I could make in both hiring, right? Because a lot of people say to me, I think my TC can do this job. I think my lead clinical assistant can do this job. And we all know that the overwhelming majority of times that we move these people up the chain of command, it not only loses a great TC, but you lose an employee because now there's no place for them to go back to when it doesn't work out. To me, that's a mistake, right? Just naturally assuming that the person you have in your house right now is someone capable of doing the job. Oh, she's number one right now, so she should move in or he should move into that position. Would you agree that that's one of the big mistakes that people make?
Yes, 100%. I think that we think if they're our best clinical, if they're our office man, whatever it is, they're the best of the best, that they must be, they'll be good at the TC position or whatnot. It's the same with, I'm thinking about in my sales career, just because you're a good salesperson doesn't mean you're a good sales manager. They're very different positions because you do have to take the focus off of, as a manager, the focus isn't on you at all. And if it is on you, you're not a good manager because it really should be all about your people. So I think as you're hiring people for strategic positions like your TC, as your office manager, your director of operations, that you've got to be thinking about the specific skill set that goes along with that. And the specific skill set for a salesperson, which is really your TC, is not someone that's a cheesy car salesperson, I say, but someone that when you talk to, are they genuinely listening?
Right.
Are they professional? How do they speak to you? Are they motivated? Do they, are they, some people care about having sales and some people don't. You kind of either have it in you or you don't. So I can tell right away who's going to be a good TC and who's not within probably a minute of meeting them. It's pretty easy for me to kind of tell. But Dr. Boschken in every single interview usually says, have you ever thought about a TC position? And I'm looking at him like, yeah, this isn't really a good fit, But I think that it's easy, it's easy to go there. So find out, and that could be something I could put together, but there are specific qualities that are going to be different for ATC. I always talk about look at people that you walk into Nordstrom and you have a great customer experience with, who went out of their way to help you. You went to a high-end restaurant. You can, is that waiter or waitress that has remembered all the little details that you've asked for? Those kind of people that you're meeting when you're out and about and you've seen that high level of customer service and their attention to detail, those could be great hires. They don't have to be in orthodontics or dentistry to do the TC position,
Right.
And then in terms of the right-hand person, I would say that there's got to be, it's not necessarily just the TC. That has to be someone who's looking to grow the business, who has strengths in working and managing people. If you ask me what the worst part of my job is, I love managing people. I hate having to give the feedback.
You hate having to give feedback.
Yeah. In over things that I feel like I've talked about. So maybe some of these
Oh, you
things could
mean day to
happen
day
in,
in everybody's life? The same thing we
yeah,
all do all day long. Haven't we talked about
yes,
this 20 times already, right?
probably. We've talked
Right?
about this. And then I do not want a toxic environment. So if I get the gossipy, the drama, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you hate that. It's just none of us want that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
but you've got to be willing to have someone that, is willing to do it. And I'm about doing it, trying to be kind, having an open door, but also setting up expectations so that we can thrive together as a business. I think it's probably, is it, Dino Watt, who's talks about having that one employee that can ruin your whole business, your whole environment, and just making sure that you're not keep holding on to that one employee because you're too afraid to let them go, but they're actually, ruining
Yeah.
your environment. So I kind of jumped around there. I'm sorry
No,
about
you're all over. It's
that.
great. But, a couple of things you said. For everybody out there listening, again, this just comes from, if you're watching, all the gray hair I have. Every one of these gray hairs was one bad experience in my life, in my practice, right? And there's been a lot in this area over here. That was
It
clinical.
looks pretty
This is
good.
admin, a little less admin than clinical. But I'm just going to tell everybody out there, that one employee who you feel you can't live without, they are amazing. They do everything. If you lose them, you're in trouble. I'm telling you right now. If you even have to think about it, let them go. Just if you have to,
Yeah.
if you have to think about that person, they do all this stuff for you, and you're thinking about letting them go, let them go. Chances are, the moment you do that, your practice will thrive. Yeah, you'll go through a tough time at first trying to replace them, but I guarantee you, they are not as important as you think they are. And here, I'm going to throw one more. Many of these people are hiding things to make you think they're more important. And when they leave, it is an absolute crap show when you find out what they were really doing. And then you find out that they never were the right person and the job wasn't getting done the way it should have. And you find that your office becomes that much better. So, beyond the whole not keeping the one person, that one person who you think is indispensable, who's the greatest ever, but you're getting bad vibes from, I'm telling you, um, it's not worth it. It's never worth it. Never, ever worth it. And never be afraid of letting somebody go, right? It's so important to never. And you talk about, you hate giving feedback. Next year's summit, we've already sort of set the whole schedule for next year's summit for Orthopreneurs, and it's Summit at Sea, right? We took out a whole ship, an entire Royal Caribbean ship for next year.
My goodness.
And I went out of my way to make sure that there's nobody I put on the speaker list who's an orthodontist that anybody's ever heard of. Nobody's going to see the same people on the same stage over and over and over again. I've sort of stepped away from that for next year. And I put on people who come from outside ortho or inside ortho but aren't orthodontists. There's only one exception to that as far as I know, and it's Dave Boschken. And he's going to be on it doing a fireside chat with me, not a lecture, just for 30 minutes while we talk about a lot of the things. But one of the people who's going to be on that stage, I have 3 to 4 people, all of whom could be keynote speakers. Just they're there to talk, and one of them is named Joe Hirsch. Joe was on, I think, podcast number 3 or 4 or 5. He was early on in the Orthopreneurs podcast, and he wrote a book called The Feedback Fix that I think everybody should read. And if you don't want to read the book, at the very least, listen to his podcast episode. Joe Hirsch. He followed the Deloitte and Touche training program. I think it was Deloitte. He followed them for a year to see how new management is brought in and how did they give them feedback. And the way they give it and the way they learn to give proper feedback is totally different than the way we do it. And I don't want to sort of destroy his thunder, but if you turn in, I think it's somewhere around minute 13 or 14, he gives a master class in how to give effective feedback for people who don't like giving feedback, and how to give it in a way that is objective, proactive, involving the person, and very clear in terms of what's going to happen next steps. And he calls it a wrap as opposed to a crap sandwich, right? Hey, Nicole, you're a valued member of this team. Really love having you here, but we're facing all this drama and all this stuff's going on, and we just can't have it anymore. Okay. But I'll tell you, I love you. I think you're great. And I know we can make it through this. It's a crap sandwich. You gave crap in the middle of 2 pieces of compliment, and nobody hears it because all they hear is the compliment. He shows how to make a wrap, as he calls it, where it's amazing. So as somebody who says you hated it,
Absolutely.
you
I
gave me
love
the
that.
opportunity to come in there.
Yeah.
And I quiz him on real life ways to do it, but he's going to speak next year at Summit on how to be a higher performing team, how to be a higher performing manager and leader and doctor. And best of all, he'll be on the ship for 4 days with everybody else. So you'll run into him on the deck, you'll run into him at dinner, and hey, I had a question about that. To create that
Right,
sort of
right.
togetherness. And so you mentioned it. I had to bring it
Yeah.
up because
No,
I
I
think
love that.
I
So
think it's so
true.
vital. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so tell me, with a little time we have left, what is the one thing you love doing the most? What is your favorite thing of your position that if you could do it all day long and nothing else, it would be just this because you love doing it, or what you think you're best at?
Hmm. Oh, gosh, if I have to bring it down, just it's like one or two things. But what I love about my job is the connection with the people, the connection with our patient pool, and the connection with our team. I mean, I love our team members, but having people walk into the office, and if I try to allow time for myself throughout the day to connect with the mom, to make them a coffee, to talk with them. I walked in last week and a mom was grabbing a cup of coffee and she was like, "Oh, Nicole, do you have 5 minutes? I want to just talk to you real quick." And I love that, knew my name quickly, came and talked to her, and she said, "We talked 3 months ago about me going into Invisalign. I'm ready to start."
Nice.
But outside of that, I was also able to talk with her. "Hey, how's the new school year going? How's this?" It's just, it's all about that whole connection. I want to lift people up. I want them to feel good when they leave. And I think that when they come into an environment that's safe, that's fun, that all of uplifting, all of these things, that they want to continue to keep coming back and they want their friends to come. And it's not only fun for them, but it's also fun for you because you get to do what you love. So I would say that part. And then my second in that is meeting with the new patients. I love being able to tell someone, that comes in that's maybe not smiling, embarrassed to show their teeth, and then I'll get to show them a before and after of their smile and just get them excited about it. You feel like you're impacting them in a positive way. And so then you leave work not exhausted, but you leave work excited because you're able to, put into others, give something away to others. And so that's what I'm most passionate about, I would say.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You're the right person for the job. It's crystal clear. We all wish we had a Nicole Pruitt in our practices. And
Oh, thank you.
before I let you leave, I'm going to ask you one last question. Quick answer.
Yes.
Because it's a question that's asked a lot related to people who are director of operations, has no bearing on what you currently do. But I'm curious to know your thoughts. If you hire that person, would you bonus them based on production and collection of the practice, or would you not?
For director of operations?
Would you bonus your director of operations on production and collection, or would you separate that from them so that they weren't sort of driven by the numbers and more about effectiveness in the practice? Or
Oh,
would you say if they're effective, the numbers will go up?
if they're effective, the numbers will go up. But I do think that a bonus system is important to just continue to. It's not going to necessarily change their behavior. They should be motivated no matter what.
Right.
But it's nice to have that continual. Okay, we hit that number. We're all in this together.
I
Sorry, I
hear
know you
you.
said quick answer, but yeah,
No, that
I
it's perfect. You explained it beautifully. I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for you being a part of this today. I've learned so much from you. You're so easy to talk to. You're clearly a great people person. And
thank
Dr.
you.
Boschken is very lucky to have you. I think there's probably about 75 practices right now that are going to give you an offer to steal you away from Dr. Boschken. So let's drive up her value even more, right? But
Yes,
seriously,
yes,
thank you so much for being a part of this. Hopefully, he'll bring you and other team members on the cruise next year. Now you got to lobby him on that one. But maybe one day you'll be on the stage at Orthopreneur Summit and telling people
maybe.
how they can have someone in their life doing what you're doing. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And just want to I can't wait to see you when I see you.
Yeah, thank you.